Today we are going to deal with a small topic called reflex action. Reflex action is the function of spinal cord. What is spinal cord? The central nervous system is made up of brain and spinal cord. Elaborate functions are carried out by our brain, and this proper function is carried out by our spinal cord. Where is spinal cord located? Inside the vertebral column. It is safely held inside the vertebral column. Spinal cord is a cylindrical structure, long cylindrical structure, and when you look from outside, the spinal cord seems to be completely white in color. Now the diagram what I have drawn here is the cross section of the spinal cord. What do you mean by cross section? Transverse section. When you cut across the spinal cord and look what is inside is the diagram what is drawn here to depict the function of the spinal cord called reflex action. Yes. How is this reflex action proceeded? How it is carried out? What is this reflex action actually? It is a spontaneous, sudden response to a stimuli. It is a response to stimuli. When you touch, for example, when you touch something hot, will you keep your finger on that hot surface for a long time? You will retract and remove your finger out. If something comes near your eye, you will quickly close your eyelid. All that happens spontaneously. Within a fraction of the second, all these actions will happen. You are responding according to the stimuli. Which is the organ which is carrying out the response to stimuli or reflex action? It is nothing but our spinal cord. The central nervous system's part of it called the spinal cord. Now we are going to see how this reflex action is carried out. How is it carried out? Yes, this is a cross section of the spinal cord. When we take a cross section of the spinal cord, there are two layers, there are two zones, two areas of the spinal cord. The outermost zone is completely white in color, which is called white matter. It has two depressions, the dorsal fissure, a depression, and a ventral fissure. The dorsal one is slightly broad and smaller, whereas the ventral fissure will be long and narrow. Ventral, this is dorsal. This is a cross section of the spinal cord. Okay, already I have mentioned that the spinal cord, when we take a cross section, it's made up of two layers, outer white matter and inner gray matter. Now we'll look about the gray matter. It has 1, 2, 3 and 4 horn-like structures. This is dorsal horn, this is ventral horn. Located dorsally, ventrally, and thereby we give the name as a pair of dorsal horns and pair of ventral horns. Where is it located? Where is it present? In the gray matter. Okay. இப்போ நம்ம spinal cord பத்தி cross section பத்தி பார்த்தோம். Outer white matter இருக்கும், inner gray matter இருக்கும். இதையும் தாண்டி உள்ள ஒரு deep canal இருக்கும். Throughout spinal cordல ஒரு canal, ஒரு pathway that is called central canal, or even it can be called as spinal canal. Canal na enna? ஒரு pathway, or completely it is like a complete depression or a pathway. In the pathway or in the canal வந்து empty-ஆ இருக்காது. It is filled with cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. We call it as cerebrospinal fluid. Throughout a brain-க்கு வெளியில, brain-க்கு உள்ள, spinal cord-க்கு உள்ள, there is cerebrospinal fluid or fluid இருக்கும். Very important. The cerebrospinal fluid helps to maintain the buoyancy first of all. It gives a nourishing, it provides a nourishing nutrient for the entire neuron in the brain and spinal cord. and also it acts as a shock absorber. Shock absorb பண்ணி வச்சுக்கோ. Brain will not get damaged. Suppose you are exposed to anything, a shocking news or a shocking sight or something, you hear something, clear, immediately your brain tissues and your spinal cord won't get damaged. That is a function of cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, that is present in the central canal. இப்போ நம்ம process of reflex action பத்தி தெளிவா பார்க்க போறோம். We are going to see in detail the process of reflex action. What did I say is the reflex action? It is a spontaneous immediate action carried out in response to stimuli. Immediate. அதுக்கப்புறம் தான் நம்ம யோசிப்போம். We have done this activity ன்னு அப்புறம் தான் யோசிப்போம். Clear? Immediately it's being done. How is it being done? First of all, first component is called as a receptor organ. Receptor organ which will receive the stimuli. அதனால தான் அது பேர் receptor organ which receives the stimuli. Usually ஏதாவது சூடா தொட்டா your skin only is going to be your receptor organ, the organ which is going to receive the stimuli. Yes, so this is called receptor organ. சின்ன சின்ன epithelial cells of the skin வரைஞ்சிருக்கேன் to depict receptor organ. Skin is experiencing that. Immediate a neuron called afferent or sensory neuron, உன்னோட ஸ்கின்ல இருந்து sensory neuron அந்த impulse வந்து spinal cord குள்ள எடுத்துட்டு போகுது. It is carrying it to the gray matter of the spinal cord. White matter illa, it is going inside the gray matter of the spinal cord. See, I have drawn the arrow in the direction of the impulse. Okay, so sensory neuron is carrying the impulse. அதை கொண்டு போய் gray matterல கொடுத்துருது. ஒன்று கொடுத்தா அடுத்த நியூரான் வாங்கணும். That is only the conduction of impulse. The impulse is conducted in that way. So, the small neuron, a bit of neuron which will receive the impulse located inside the gray matter is called as relay neuron. In the chinna bit of neuron is called relay neuron, also called interneuron. இதுக்கு பேர் ரிலே நியூரான்னு கொடுக்கலாம், இன்டர்மீடியட் நியூரான்னு கொடுக்கலாம், இன்டர்நியூரான்னு கொடுக்கலாம். ஓகே, I'll just give you an example. ரிலே ரேஸ்ன்னு பார்த்துருப்பீங்க. The pattern is being transmitted to the next runner, giving it to that. It's handed over. Same way, this is conducting the impulse. Therefore, it is called relay neuron. இப்போ இந்த impulse relay neuron வாங்கிக்குது. This relay neuron has to transfer it to the next neuron. To carry out the impulse, it has to transfer it to the next neuron. The next neuron oda peru motor neuron. Okay, receive panni vaangi kudukudhu motor neuron. Motor neuron is otherwise called efferent neuron. Sensory neuron is called afferent neuron. Motor neuron is called efferent neuron. இப்போ இந்த efferent neuron impulse வாங்கி வெளியில, that is spinal cord வெளியில கொண்டுட்டு வருது. It is bringing the impulse out of the spinal cord and through this nerve or neuron the effector organ. இதான் effector organ. The effector organ which is going to respond to the stimuli. For example, muscle. நான் என்ன first example கொடுத்தேன்? Something you touch something hot, immediately you will retract your finger. இப்போ skin தான் feel பண்ணுது impulse. Immediately muscle இழுத்தாதான் you will retract back your muscle to take back your finger. So, the organ which is going to respond to the stimuli is called effector organ, and usually the muscles will be the effector organ. All the more even the glands can be the effector organ. ஏதோ ஒரு unusual situation face பண்ணீங்கன்னா, clear, what do? Immediately you will start sweating. You will start sweating and the sweat is released out because of the action of the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland is only the organ of fight, fright and flight. We know that. Emergency hormone. Immediately you will start sweating. You will respond according to that. Some unusual news you hear, you see something which is a little bit unusual, immediately you are frightened and you sweat. So, there the effector organ will be the gland. It is a adrenal gland immediately secreting its hormone to release out the sweat, and also your heartbeat increases, your respiration rate increases. There will be also hair raising, goosebump, okay, all that, goose flesh, all that will happen. All that happenings will be the effect what is conducted through the motor neuron to the effector organ. So this is the pathway of the reflex action, and we have seen this pathway in the form of a semicircle or an arc. Therefore, reflex action is always carried out in the form of a reflex arc. The response to stimuli happens in the direction of a reflex arc, that is only in the form of a semicircle, that is the components begin from receptor organ, carried through sensory neuron or afferent neuron, transmitted through a bit of neuron called relay neuron, which receives and transmits, and it is carried via motor neuron, which is also called as efferent neuron, and finally it is being transmitted to the effector organ. Usually maximum the muscles will act as an effector organ, which is going to respond to that particular stimuli. That particular stimuli, not always, responds to a particular stimuli. Okay, and this is the activity which is called reflex action, the major important function, which is a function of our spinal cord, which is a part of the central nervous system.